Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Shula Newman. Many years ago, St. Louisan Chris Bolyard made the decision to switch careers and go from working in restaurants to providing them with an alternative to big box grocery store meat. He went on to become the head butcher and owner of Bolyard's Meat and Provisions located in Maplewood. Now, Chris will soon be familiar to many across the nation after his appearance on a new History Channel television series called The Butcher, which airs tonight at 9 p.m. The goal of the show is to help educate the public on the skills that it takes to be a butcher and to butcher a whole animal. Chris Bolyard joins us in studio to talk about his time on The Butcher, the animal butchering craft, and so much more. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very intrigued by this, but I want to start with this TV show that you're on, The Butcher. It's on the History Channel?
Correct.
And I don't usually associate reality-type competitions with the History Channel,
Right.
So what's the link?
So it's a very well put together show. I was pretty impressed with how the whole thing went down. I had never seen a television show put together like that. Because my first impression was this could be something that's kind of cheesy. You've seen a lot of those cheesy shows on television, but it's very educational. All the episodes that I've seen leading up to mine, I haven't seen mine yet, have been well put together, very educational. And are just very engaging, and they're easy to watch. They're exciting.
How did you get selected to be on the show? Was there an audition?
No, so there was a friend of mine in the industry. He actually made it on the show, and I guess they were looking for other contestants for other episodes, and he gave them my name, and they reached out to me. And there was some kind of back and forth and some Skype interviews and background checks and all that fun stuff. And they selected me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. So you evidently wielded the knife in just the right way, I guess.
I don't
good
know.
for TV.
I was kind of surprised that I made it on the show. I figured they were looking for, a little bit more of a flashy personality, I guess. But I made the cut.
Pun intended, I'm sure. So what are we going to see? There's a competition involved.
Yeah. So basically, the way it works is there's 4 butchers, and there is 3 challenges, and at the end of every challenge, someone gets sent home. And there's 3 judges who are very well known in the industry, and they're kind of critiquing your cuts and your efficiency and your yield, and there's always a curveball that's kind of thrown into the challenge that you're not prepared for, and you don't know what you're going to do right up until they announce the challenge. So we had no idea what we were going to be doing, which made it very interesting and kind of nerve-wracking.
I would think. So I heard that one of the things you had to cut up a deer using a traditional flint knife.
Yeah.
What is that? What does that look like?
So basically, it looks like a rock with a sharp edge. That was a bit of a challenge. So the way that worked, they gave us an access deer. It's just the species of the breed of deer that we were working on, and the challenge was we had to use this flint knife to break it down into primals, so to separate it into shoulder and saddle and the hind quarter, and then from that point we were able to use our own knives to further break it down into retail cuts. But it was rather challenging to use this flint knife. I was, like I said, basically using a sharp rock to get through these primals. So
I take it you've never done anything like that.
No, nothing like that at all. I had never seen one of those before.
That's kind of crazy. So
Yeah.
did you learn something in this competition from some of the other butchers there? Was it educational for you?
Yeah, I think any time that I get to cut meat next to someone else, I learned something, because there's so many different ways to butcher an animal. There's so many different styles, just various ways to retrieve cuts from the animal. It's always a learning experience for me. That's part of why I love what I do, because there's many ways to do things.
So I'm curious. I have 2 questions about the show. One is, do we know if you got sent home early, or are you not allowed to say?
You'll have to watch and see. Yeah.
Anticipation.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, what happens to the meat that was cut up on the show?
So it all gets donated to animal shelters.
Oh.
Yeah. So nothing goes to waste. Yeah.
So it sticks with the ethos that you bring to your profession in general.
Absolutely.
Great. So I want to back up and ask you a little bit more about yourself. You were a chef first. You got trained at the Culinary Institute of America, which is no small feat. But you didn't stick with it. What made you change your profession and go into butchering?
Yeah, that was the goal. The ultimate goal from the get-go was to own my own restaurant one day. My wife has a very strong restaurant background as well, and we just kind of decided about halfway through my time at Sydney Street Cafe that we wanted to open a butcher shop. I just have always loved that aspect of food and cooking is butchering whole animals and utilizing the whole animals, whether it's charcuterie, smoked meats, the preservation aspect of it, I really fell in love with. And we did a lot of that at Sydney Street Cafe, and I kind of honed my skills there in butchering. And we decided, my wife Abby and I decided, A, there was a need for something like Bolyard's in St. Louis, and B, it was a little more conducive to a family lifestyle. We've got 2 young girls and one on the way. So now that Bolyard's has been open for almost 5 years, I'm able to step away and have more family time than I did working in the restaurant business.
Are you also mentoring younger butchers then to do some of the work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a solid crew that I work with every day at the shop. And, we take on stages if anybody's interested in learning the craft of butchering. Cause I did a lot of that when I was learning. And so, I feel like it's my way to like give back, to, the community of butchers. I did a lot of staging at other butcher shops around the country and other restaurants. And it's just a good way to get hands-on learning.
I assume that staging is sort of like apprenticeship.
Exactly, yeah. So stage is short for stagiaire, and it's just basically, an unpaid apprenticeship position, and it could be anywhere from a day to months, on end.
So I have to ask also, as somebody who's a little intimidated by meat, that first time that you came up to a carcass, I mean, what was it? And was it at all intimidating, or were you like, finally?
Oh, very much so. I'd say the most intimidating was butchering whole beef, because I had got a lot of experience early on with butchering hogs, and that was intimidating at first. I didn't know what I was doing, and there was a lot of trial and error and just learning from other people who had done more of it than I had. But when I finally got a chance to break down whole beef, it was very intimidating to me because it's a much larger animal, and looking at it's not as transparent as like a side of pork. The cuts are bigger. They're buried in the animal, and it's not as easy to look at and pick out. Oh well, here's the pork chops. Here's the pork butt, and so on and so forth. With beef, it's there's many more cuts on the animal, and they're harder to get to, and they're like I said, it's not as transparent looking at it.
It's like, for me, that would be like looking at a chicken. I don't think I've ever looked at a pig to know how to cut it up, but I look at a chicken, I'm like, oh, there's the wing, there's the leg. Okay, yeah. So but with a cow, it's there's meat that actually comes from underneath the surface.
Wow, absolutely.
I have so many questions. First of all, earlier you had said that St. Louis needs a place like Bolyard's Meats and Provisions. So what makes it unique?
So there's a lot of things that makes it unique, and not to take away anything from the butcher shops that have been around for much, much longer than we have. I think what sets us apart is all the meat that comes into the shop comes in as a whole animal. We don't get any additional boxed meat or extra cuts, so we just sell what's on that animal for the week, and so by the end of the week, we might be out of many cuts because there's only so many of those per animal. And all the animals come from local farms that we have very close relationships with. We've been to the farms. We've also been to the processing facilities that they spend their last day at. And we set pretty high standards with these farms. All the animals are raised on pasture their whole life. They're never given any unnecessary drugs or hormones. They live about as happy and healthy life as they can, and that's important. And that, with that being said, the nutritional value of our meat is going to be a lot higher than some factory farmed meat that you might get at your grocery store.
I thought it would be all about the taste. I never thought about the nutritional value.
Taste is definitely a big one too. I mean, you can do a comparison with any of our steaks or our chops side by side with that from a larger chain grocery store, and you can definitely taste the difference. You can see the difference. I think it's just all around a better product.
So there is kind of an inherent, I don't know, morbidness about this. And you're taking a life. It's involved in killing an animal before you butcher it. Do you ever grapple with that? And you talk about how the animals, they're living their best life until their last day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've given a lot of thought. I mean, people don't eat meat for a lot of different reasons. So, I'll try not to get into that too much, but these animals have been, sustaining life for us for centuries. And if you were to take these animals and put them out in nature on their own, their death would be much more violent. Their life would not be as stress-free and enjoyable. They're given the best life they could have. And with that being said, there's also a humane way to dispatch the animal or kill the animal, and that is just as important to us as how they spend their whole life. Because you can spend the time and energy raising this animal in the best way possible, and then a lot of things can go wrong, in their last day. So that's equally as important to us.
And that influences the taste as well, I assume?
Yeah, for sure. The taste, the quality of the meat, all that can be affected.
That's really interesting. So I take it you're a meat eater yourself.
I am,
a carnivore.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh, man. It just depends on the day. I get asked that question a lot, like what's my favorite cut or all that. I typically will take home, the steaks that have been in the case for a few days and they don't look as nice, and those typically taste the best. They've got some age on them, and I'll take those home and eat them. But I guess it just depends on the day and what my favorite cut is, I think that pork is probably the most fun to work with, just in the sense that every single aspect of it is usable. A lot of charcuterie is made from pork, so like the preservation side of things. The sky's the limit on that. So I think the pig is the most versatile when you're talking about charcuterie and sausage making and preserving it.
So you mentioned, like, when you talk about using the whole thing, and the concept of using an entire animal, does that include organs?
Yeah.
And how does that come up as a non-butcher?
Yeah. So that includes using the skin on hogs. We get the hog skin on. We don't get the hide with beef or with lamb. So the skin will get used, whether it's in a sausage or it gets smoked for a dog treat. The bones will get used for stocks and broths. The fat will get rendered down for cooking, or the harder fat on hogs will get used for sausage. And then you asked about the organ meat. I mean, those are all have great uses as well. Like pork liver, for example, all the pork liver that we get with our hogs gets put into the Braunschweiger that we make at the shop. The beef heart and the beef tongue, those are larger organs. I mean, tongue is technically not an organ, but we'll use those to make deli meat, like pastrami or corned beef. Some of those will sell fresh to the public, but it's not something that is in high demand. So, we'll try to utilize those as with added value items to them. Beef liver, we get a lot of people that buy beef liver, believe it or not. People are trying to get more iron in their diet, or just get more nutrients from a pasture-raised animal by eating its liver.
So all of that. I have recollections of when I was little, my mom actually made beef tongue, and it would be sitting in the pot, and the tongue would be out, and it really looked like somebody's going, on the side of the tongue.
Yeah.
But I remember really liking it.
I could see how that would stick as a memory as a child. Yeah, for
Definitely stick. Another memory I have is going to the butcher with my mom as a kid. In the 1970s. I'm old. And it was not what I would call a cool experience. But it seems that now there's kind of this hipster mystique going on with butchers. And I'm wondering what you think has changed, what has evolved.
It's definitely, it's obviously made a strong resurgence, the craft of butchering. It started on the East and West Coast and then kind of slowly moved its way to the Midwest. I think it kind of stemmed from people just more concerned with where their food comes from. And the easiest way to do that is to have a local butcher. Because typically these smaller local butchers are sourcing their animals locally, and they're not getting them from factory farms or feedlots and things like that. And it just ties in with people eating food. There's more of a connection, with people's food now, because people are aware that what you eat has a direct effect on your health. And I think that's kind of where it started. And yeah, there's definitely kind of like this, kind of hipster aspect to it. There's always going to be that, but I'm just happy to be a part of that food movement.
If you're just joining us, my guest is Chris Bolyard. He's the head butcher and owner of Bolyard's Meat and Provisions in Maplewood, and he's also starring, can I say, on the show
Sure.
The Butcher on the History Channel tonight at 9:00. Going back, I'm wondering also, do you think that you were talking about the interest that people have in locally raised animals that are more humanely treated. In general, how do you see your shop and your work fitting in with the culinary scene in St. Louis?
I think that it's a great addition to the culinary scene in St. Louis. There's a lot of other smaller boutique shops like ours, as well as a plethora of culinary talent. St. Louis, I think, is definitely contend with, some of the other larger cities that are known for a great food scene. And so I think a place like Bolyard's that makes everything in-house, whether it's deli meat or charcuterie, or, we have a sandwich program. Pretty much everything that we sell, we make in-house. So provisions, for example, those would be rendered fats and stocks, condiments. We do a lot of fermenting and pickling, things like that. I think that kind of ties in with the very awesome food scene that we have here in St.Louis.
And I heard you use the term sandwich programs.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So to put it simply, we offer lunch.
Okay.
So it's just one aspect of what we do. So that kind of came out of necessity. We didn't plan on selling sandwiches when we first opened the shop, and we had to evolve and kind of readjust the business plan to make things work. And so we decided to throw a sandwich offering on there, and it was started out as one sandwich, and now we have like 7 sandwiches, and we have about 16 to 18 seats inside, so you can dine in and grab a sandwich, and we serve those every day, open to close, and those are kind of seasonal, and then we'll have one that'll be a special and kind of rotate weekly or bi-weekly,
depending on what's available, of course.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I am a bit of a I was going to use the term chicken, but I'm a little bit intimidated when I'm cooking meat. I'm always afraid that I'm going to get food poison or trichinosis or something like that. So what advice do you give to timid chefs like me that come in to the shop and want to try to cook something?
Yeah, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that come in and they're not avid cooks. They're very intimidated by coming into a shop like ours, and they're a little bit perplexed when they see the menu board and the fresh cuts. They might be used to seeing everything laid out in a case, all these cuts prepackaged and
neatly
things like
wrapped
that.
up, right?
Right, exactly. We do have a deli case, and it's always loaded up with things, but there's not as many fresh cuts as there are house-made items. So we're happy to walk people through whatever they're trying to do, give them the best advice possible, make it as easy as possible on them, to set them up for success. They're spending a little bit more money than they would at your average grocery store, so we want them to go home and have a good experience with what they buy. So we're happy to answer questions all day long.
And you have recipes too that you offer people?
We can offer recipes. We all have cooking backgrounds, and so we're very capable of offering advice on how to cook your meat.
I'll have to check that out. I have one last question for you, and this goes back to the whole profession that you're in. What do you think the most common misconception is that people have around butchers and around and butchering? I guess the noun version.
I don't know. I guess oh man, that's a good question. I guess there's a lot of misconceptions. One being it's kind of like I guess if you're involved in slaughter, it can be a messy, bloody job. But we don't do the slaughtering of the animal. So, that's the step between us and the farm. It's a very clean operation. It's not as messy or as dirty as one might think. So I guess that's one misconception that we can clear up. It's a very tidy, clean operation, and we're not a bunch of rugged.
But it's still very physical.
Mean guy. Oh yeah, it's a very, very, very physical work. Yeah, for sure.
Well, for the record, I'm not seeing any blood splattered anywhere on you or in this room.
Right. Cleaned up before I came. Yeah.
Oh, I'm afraid we have to wrap it up. I want to thank Chris Bolyard for being with us today. As a reminder, tonight's episode of The Butcher airs tonight at 9 p.m. on the History Channel. Chris, it was really great to talk with you.
Yes,
thank you so
for
much.
Having me.
This is St. Louis on the Air, St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com. The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on The Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.